Today we'll be looking at the physical aspects of the Otway forest region. It'll be followed by a future presentation on the human effects on the Otway forest region. Today we'll be looking at a variety of the physical aspects of it, not just of the forest, but of the landforms themselves, as well as the spatial association between the forest and the landforms. Now this first image to your right shows the forested area of the Otway region. Anything that is found within the red lines is part of the national park system, the Otway National Park System. Within the green areas are other protected forested areas, and any of the dark green that lies outside of those areas, outside of those bordered areas, is forest that is not protected by any sort of national or state body. Now you can see that it's a big area that's covered, and the national park area itself is 250,000 acres, which is a huge amount of protected forest. But obviously, as you can see from the rest of the picture to the north, that doesn't cover a whole lot when you think of the overall size of the state of Victoria. Now the climate of the region it's a fairly temperate climate, which means it doesn't get too hot. Hottest average daily highs are in the low 20s, and it doesn't get too cold. It's in the low teens for the average high in the middle of winter. You also see it doesn't get a huge amount of precipitation. The highest it ever gets is just over 100 millimeters per month on average in the middle of the winter. And it doesn't get too dry. In the summer, you're getting just over 40 millimeters. So this climate in the Otway region, and this is obviously only a snapshot of the Cape Otway Lighthouse climate, this climate does affect the forest types in the region. Here's a broader look at precipitation in the state of Victoria. What you can see here, and this is the Otway region in the bottom sort of center right, you can see that the Otway region further inland is the wettest part of lower southwest Victoria. So this pink means that they're getting over 1,500 millimeters of rain per year. Some areas of the Otways get up to 200 or 2,000 millimeters per year, which is 2 meters obviously, and that's specifically in the rainforest areas of the Otways. But in general, you can see it ranges somewhere in between the 1,000 millimeters and the over 1,500 millimeters per year mark. Now this is a look at the elevation and topography of the area, and you could see this as we drove through the area on the bus. It's a very, very hilly area. In the top left, in the picture on the top left, you see Mount Cowley, which is sort of northwest of Lorne. It's the highest elevation in the Otway region at 686 meters in height. And you can also see at Lorne itself, in the bottom right-hand corner, the forest, when there's not houses, when it hasn't been cleared, the forest comes right down to sea level. So those differences in elevation certainly affect the type of forest you see. As well, there's huge steep hills that lead into deep gullies, especially in the rainforest region. The steep hills with the deep gullies lead to sort of a dark and often very wet area for the rainforest to develop. And we saw that during our Triplet Falls walk. Now, there's three main types of forest we're going to look at here when we look at forest type and spatial association. And again, when we're talking spatial association, we're talking how how something is linked to a specific area. So in this case, we're talking about how forest type is linked to specific areas within the Otway region. You can see on the left-hand side a picture of the cool temperate rainforest, and that's what our Triplet Falls walk, that's where we were, in the cool temperate rainforest. These are generally in those steep areas we were talking about on the previous slide, where there's big gullies, cool temperatures deep in the gully, and a lot of light taken away because of the steep hills. On the right here, you have a tall open forest, a tall open eucalypt forest, which is dominated by the mountain ash species. And you can see how it's a much more open canopy than you see on the left here with cool temperate rainforest, and a different ground cover as well. And these are generally found on the south and the southwest of the Otways, and they're usually on hills where they get more exposure to the sun versus deep in the gullies where you find the cool temperate rainforest. And often they're sort of mixed together, where you find the tall open forest on the top of the hills and the cool temperate rainforest deeper into those gullies in the area. Now in this, you see a different type of eucalypt forest. You see what's called the mixed eucalypt medium open forest. So versus this tall open forest, you can see the trees are much lower. Same sort of open nature, less of a ferny underbrush. More, you see the secondary succession, you see new trees coming in. But these are much shorter trees than the mountain ash. You get a mix of things like blue gum, etc., through these forests. Now I want to talk a bit about primary and secondary forest, or primary and secondary succession forest in the area. There are very few old growth forests in the area. Primarily, there's secondary succession in the forest. Most of that is because almost all of the areas of the Otways have at one point been logged, and many have been burnt because of the forest fires in the area. Now on the left you can see one of the few old growth forests in the Otways, and on the right you see one of the images from Triplet Falls that we visited, which is a remnant of the logging in the area, despite the fact that you couldn't see necessarily that it had been logged because it was such a dense forest and there's so much growth in the area. One of the other physical markers of the forests are these plantation forests that you see in the Otways. On the left is a plantation forest of eucalypts, and on the right is a plantation forest of pines. Now, these plantation forests are used as the backbone of the current logging industry in the area today, and we'll talk about that in the later presentation on human impact on the Otways. Here is a satellite map of plantations in the area. All of the yellow areas that you see are blue gum plantations, eucalypt plantations, where all of the brown areas are pine plantations. So though they don't dominate the landscape of the forests, they're certainly not just a tiny unseen part of the forest in the area either. So as you can see, there's a great deal of variety in the physical aspects that define the Otway region, both in the lithosphere, the ground, the topography, the elevation, as well as in the biosphere when we're looking at the forests themselves. These create a very unique forested area, and there's so many historical links and so much future potential because of these very, very useful forests.